Okay, so Devsync. So this past 2 weeks mostly been looking at, well, our delegations and how we can make that, I guess, feasible. And also looking a bit at the Rosetta API, some various thoughts about that, but more on that later. And also some thought on how we can reduce the overhead of reviews, mostly to reduce load on Portrait team. And yeah, I guess most of it has been brainstorming on things and a few reviews from Bartek, I guess. Oh, and also I think I finished the overhaul. I don't remember if that was this week or the week prior to that. But yeah, I changed recurrent transfer a whole bunch. Yeah, that's it for me.
Okay, so this week we primarily just being doing testing and bug fixes. We made the change to Beam. You made the first fix for the Beam testing problem, and now we've got it so that it basically doesn't expose any of the details of the transactions to the external client when you're using Beam. Let's see, other issues. We've created a script that generates for Hive. This is the git config API call is now, the code for that is auto-generated from a script that's run by CMake. So there's no need to continually update that every time we make changes to the API now. So, which is good, because I know there were already a couple of reports where changes were made to the API and the git config wasn't being updated. So this will get rid of that kind of hassle and maintenance headache. During our testing, we've been testing HiveMine and Devsync, which are multi-day processes, and we were running on two systems, and we noticed one system was both systems were configured somewhat similarly, and we expected them to have about the same amount of time for each, and one was running much slower. So we started digging into what was going on there, and there were slightly different configurations, so we weren't sure if it's just something different about the way they were configured, in terms of swap or the way the database was configured or anything like that. But ultimately, we began to suspect it was an IO-related problem on one of the systems, which it turned out to be. But that also exposed some issues in Hive D, long-standing issues in terms of the way the peer-to-peer network communicates to the blockchain thread. And what it resulted in is, if you were on a system with IO hardware problems, you could potentially have trouble maintaining sync. And I think we saw this. Bittrex reported a problem like this, and eventually just moved off to their wallet to their Hive wallet to a different node. But I believe that the problem was the same problem we were experiencing with this, where we had and I told them at the time I thought they were having a hardware problem, and that's why they moved to a different piece of system, different equipment. But it still wasn't great, because we kind of like our software to be somewhat tolerant to hardware problems if possible. And in this case, it was. So we isolated that the problem would happen if it took a while for the blockchain network to finish processing a block, for instance, because it was having trouble writing to the device, the disk device. And we found that originally the code was supposed to be resistant to this kind of problem. Basically, future blocks that couldn't yet be written were basically cached and then later used when the hardware was able to write the data. And that cache of future blocks had been eliminated accidentally by a change back literally in BitShares days. So this bug's been around for, I don't know, 3 or 4 years at least. I guess 5 years at least, maybe more. So we experimented around and finally made a fix for that, and we've committed we made 2 merge requests to fix that problem. So now it's much more stable. To test it, we introduced like a random delay every 5 minutes of about 18 seconds, and the node is now able to maintain contact with its peers even under that extreme kind of situation. So that's much better. We also found, while we're doing this, we were adding a lot of logging to analyze the problem, and so we found some other performance issues that I think we could improve in the future. Again, these are long-standing issues. They've been around for as long as, I would say, almost as long as the Steam code base has been around. But we're not going to tackle some of those now just because we're in the middle of a hard fork and we're basically doing a code freeze at this point. But they're not, most of them aren't consensus changes, so we can do them in the future at any point once we have time to spend on that. Let's see what other things we worked on. So that's most of, one other Hive fix we made. Well, two. We improved logging. The logging has been really annoying forever in Hive. The way it logs, it would log like the amount of time since the last hour. So if you flipped over an hour boundary, the logging was really annoying to read the timestamps. So now we're going to logging with the UTC time with milliseconds resolution by default. And we also have options that you can change that to microseconds resolution if you're doing, if you want to log for profiling of timing, which we were actually doing as part of our work. So that's why we added the support for also microsecond based timing. And one more thing, Bartek made a change. One of the problems we found was during all this too, was there was a case if you launched a node without any peers, it would basically eat up 100% CPU because it just sat there in a busy loop waiting for blocks and transactions that weren't coming. And it could be hard to tell why this was happening too, because there's no logging to report it. So there's now some logging shows up on the console to report this condition, so you know why your CPU is being eaten up. But more to the point, we also then if it happens for like I think he said 30 seconds, then he's got it so it starts sleeping periodically so that it no longer eats up of a CPU. Other changes, we've been working on HiveMind. Just on HiveMind, we've just been doing some testing, and there was one problem with the communities that was being fixed. And during that, we also found some cases where it was possible to potentially crash HiveMind through custom JSON code. So we're working to fix that right now. And some other minor problems, some problems with package updates and things like that, changes to the packages used by HiveMind. So we're making some updates there as well, but nothing major. On the modular HiveMind work, which is also could be referred to as the Hive fork module, this is the code this is a bunch of SQL code that allows Hive-based apps to handle forks. That work is continuing on. We did find some potential problems with the solution we're using, and we're evaluating a couple different options now for fixing those problems. Basically, they revolve around if there's a fork and the application is currently writing to the database at the time the fork occurs. And I guess other than that, we're still doing tests. We're going to run another Hive sync test with the head of development branch on both HiveMind and HiveD probably tomorrow after we get, or maybe a little later after we get the HiveMind fixes. But in the meantime, we're definitely going to run a final replay of HiveD, and we want to start the test net after we get those the remainder of those HiveD fixes in. So I think we'll probably have a new test net launched on Wednesday. So I guess that's about where we're at.
Cool.
So
go ahead.
You are saying Wednesday this week?
Yes.
Yes.
So we launched one test net last week, but we've got changes. So this will include the latest changes. And this will also be, the plan is to launch this test net with a HiveMind API as well. In other words, a HiveMind node, API node, so that apps can start testing. Because I think we really are we knew last week we were mostly going to be doing testing for sort of low-level testing of the blockchain. But now I think we need to start spreading that out and getting more apps-based testing of the code as well.
Okay. And will you need additional nodes for the testnet?
I don't know. That's a question for Gandalf. I certainly see no reason not to have additional nodes right offhand. I know we're going to be using 10-man to set up the accounts and stuff on it, but maybe Gandalf could chime in.
More participants are always better. So more nodes, more users, and of course more testing.
So they just need to connect up as a regular peer-to-peer node in the network, and then 10-man will just, it doesn't need to know about them or anything, or they can just hook up independently. That was a question for you, Gandalf.
Yes. You don't need anything. Just node pointing to our peer-to-peer seeds.
Perfect.
It will just work.
So, but for me, I mean, I think it's great to get more Hive D nodes, but honestly, what I'm really more interested in is if we can encourage more of the apps guys to try to hook up their run a version of their application that will then connect up to the testnet. And, you know, we'll probably need to find out what kind of things are needed to support that kind of testing.
Yes, of course.
And there is no plan to duplicate transaction from the mainnet to the testnet.
That's correct. We'll just be introducing. So, I mean, what I'd ideally like to see is, for instance, you'd get a version of Hive SQL that's connected up to the testnet. We would have, obviously, we're going to run a Hive mine node connected to the testnet, which should then allow potentially hive.blog, an instance of condenser to be connected to the testnet, an instance of peakd to be connected to the testnet. I'd like to get a bunch of the applications actually connected to the testnet if possible. We haven't been doing that in the past, but I think it'd be a nice step forward. And it potentially would allow these apps to start incorporating features of the new hard fork before the hard fork too. Otherwise, we're going to have a delay on supporting those features until after the hard fork's done. And for instance, I'm talking about like voting expiration. Does that make sense?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I guess that solves the first point, which I don't remember adding. I guess you added it to that.
I did it. I did
Yeah,
it
okay.
just before the meeting. Yeah.
Yeah.
We had a pre-meeting and that was one of the issues that came up.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, in terms of apps, I guess if we could get like a condenser running and a block explorer, that would be great.
Yeah.
Do we?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of the browsers, I think we should get them if we can. We should get the peakd guys involved for sure if we can. Ecency as well.
I'm not sure if we have the code for Hive blocks, right? It's just Rosecage that deploys it, and we should probably ping him. That's, I guess that could be.
Yeah, I think we can arrange that.
Yeah. It would be great to get one that is open source one day, though.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Some ideas for proposal if someone is listening. So yeah, okay. Do you have an ETA on the, quote unquote, final review for recurrent transfers?
I think it's done. I believe he merged it in.
Oh, really?
I think so.
Because I saw him make a new. Oh yeah, he did. Hey. Oh yeah, he did that like a few hours ago. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mention it during the review. It's hard to keep track of everything.
Oh wow, this is finally done. Excellent. Wow, great. There is no greater predator. It's like after a month of work, it's finally done.
I understand, believe me.
It's like all the dopamine that goes in. Okay, cool. So that's good and done. So that's great. That means we can get people to start integrating with this as well on the testnet for Wednesday.
Yeah, that's another reason it would be good to get the apps involved. They can test that as well.
So that means the next testnet will be the final one, quote unquote, right?
Yes.
Okay.
It's the frozen one, the hopefully frozen one.
Okay. Yeah, I guess then we can probably make an announcement somewhere to tell everyone. Maybe on.
Yeah, so we're probably looking at the latter part of June right now, I think, for the hard fork.
Okay, great. So next, it's more of long-term items. So I know we spoke a bit on the API v2, and so there was some thoughts of integrating the Rosetta API from Coinbase, which is a requirement to get listed there. And I don't know if anyone other than Coinbase is using it, but it could be interesting to have it. Yeah,
I don't think it's a bad idea to do it. I haven't looked at their API, so I don't know how complicated it is or how much work it is, but I'm guessing it's not too bad.
I looked at it. It's not that bad. It's mostly figuring out how to correctly return all the data, because I don't know yet if we can tune very much the outputs from Hive D or not. That's also from the second point of the discussion is, should it be as a plugin, which would make sense, or as like a wrapper service that would like call?
Yeah, I could see it just be a separate service entirely. It could easily be the way.
But on the other hand,
I'd imagine something communicating with the wallet probably should be sufficient. Just a wrapper that sits between the Coinbase in the wallet.
Yeah, I'm just afraid that it would require like, let's say to get one endpoint, you would have to do like 5 calls to multiple endpoints to get the correct data.
Maybe, but I mean, I'd be surprised. I mean, and it's not like it's even that would be intensive anyways in terms of actual performance. I mean,
that's a good point. Yeah, it's the kind of stuff that we have to get into to see. But like, yeah, I feel like an optional plugin would also be, I mean, it wouldn't hurt, but it's also way more development time for what it is. So the service probably is the right thing.
Yeah. I mean, we run a service, you know, that's kind of what Block Trades is the service that sits and talks to a bunch of wallets. So I think it should be feasible.
I guess we can bring some experience in there. Yeah, so yeah, on top of that, there is like a discussion that spurred through our latest developments. And so, yeah, it hasn't been an issue for the past year because I was mostly working on small things. But as I'm working on bigger things, we kind of hit a pain point where I would go and work on stuff, and then we figure out that it's not as expected, either in performance or in simple, like, let's say the input outputs, stuff that so yeah, it's pretty much to open a discussion on how we could figure out a way to avoid having as many reviews and rewrites. I figured we could, I kind of open an example with the Hive improvement proposal for the direct RC delegations. And yeah, I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that and how you would view something like this.
Yeah, I mean, I like the way you did that. I think it's a good way to start is with on-chain discussions, not only of, so we started, I mean, previously we've did on-chain discussions for functionality, but not so much for implementation, but I think it's fine to start discussing implementation as well. And I think that's, I mean, should bring in some outside eyes too, so.
Yeah, but then, well, my only fear regarding that is that it requires, let's say, an approval. I mean, let's say a peer review before starting to work. And I'm afraid that it would take time from you guys, which would involve some delays. If you're working on other things.
I mean, one thing we can do is set some standards for what we want in terms of, I mean, there's 2 different issues, I guess. One is, they're probably good to get an idea peer reviewed, an implementation idea peer reviewed for any codes written. And so I think that should be like a first stage is write an architecture document that describes how it's going to work in fairly good detail. And then there's also the second thing of the final delivery, you know, and trying to make sure the final delivery is the process of getting the final delivery incorporated is as quick and easy as possible. And there, I think we probably need to add some description of our code process in terms of things we need, like tests, performance tests, and both functional tests, and, you know, so that somebody has a pretty good idea of, you know, it's not just submitting this feature, it's also going to be submitting these tests that show the feature works. And if it interacts with any current system, you know, maybe even an initial test for that current system too. So.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Well, I mean, I guess all of this would go into a contributing.md.
Yeah, I think that's what we're talking about here, right?
which we've talked about for a few times now. Maybe we should start the drafts.
I think that would be great.
After half or 25 for sure.
Yes, yeah.
So yeah, I guess I just wanted to open a bit of discussion. The next big feature I'll be working on is direct RC delegation, or I mean, some kind of RC delegation, whatever it ends up being.
Yeah, I read through your proposal. I liked your proposed ideas for how to do it.
Yeah, so I guess this is a good segue into the last point. So on the spec, I'm basically wondering if like the direct RC delegation would be a good first implementation, or if we could add more features to it.
I'm first keeping it simple personally.
Yeah, I figured as much. Yeah, I feel like this is the simplest one we could have. The only way I could, this is where I mentioned like either that or RC pools, or maybe a mix of the 2. The only advantage that RC pools really has over direct RC delegations is I guess there are 2 options. One, there is the fact that people can just get delegated to a single pool and then the pool delegates, which involves less transactions. and less objects being alive on the chain at one time. And 2 is which is not that important, I feel like, if we do it via a posting authority. That way people can just do the trail thing, right?
Yeah, so at first I was concerned about using the posting authority because I was thinking lots of places people might be giving posting authority just for voting, and now they're giving potentially the same power to, take RC delegation. And of course you had that protection system set in where they couldn't get all the RC, which I think is important. But I thought about it more, and I don't really think that's, in some ways, someone's not really giving up more by doing this if they can also do this delegation, because you could always just burn somebody's delegation out. I mean, somebody's RC out if you give them your posting key anyways.
Yeah,
so
that's a fair point.
So I think posting key is fine. I don't think it needs to be active key.
Yeah, that's what I thought as well. In the initial implementation, it was, in the implementation for RC pool, it's active, but the more I think about it, I just feel like posting is good. And yeah, also because like with posting, you can do stuff that is arguably much worse for the account, like burning.
Yeah, you can pretend to be the person and
you burn all the voting power and stuff that has like actual financial impacts, whereas it's just RC, which is free. So it's not that bad.
Well, it's not free, but it's cheap.
Fair point.
It doesn't usually deliver someone money, but although that could change too in the future.
So I think if we agree on posting, then that's probably fine to not have pools. And then there is the only thing that's lacking from it is the ability to delegate like delegated RC, which I guess it's like another spin on the whole thing. It's not what I wrote in the spec. It's more something where instead of granting RC, which is like a direct RC delegation, like you give RC to the person, you could grant like the ability for the end user to use as much RC from the user delegating.
Yeah, just like an optimization, right? You could more efficiently use RC, but I guess I'm not even sure I'm convinced that's a great thing to do anyways.
Oh, really? Why?
Because it doesn't really help the chain any. It's just trying to help the individual owner of RC, and somewhat at the it's not a net benefit to the system, in my opinion. It doesn't really improve the efficiency of the chain itself anyway. What it does just means that somebody who has RC can potentially get their full use of it easier. I don't know. To me, it's in the scheme of the total chain. I don't think it's that meaningful.
Yeah.
I mean, it means that people may waste a little bit more of their RC that they have, but I don't think that's bad. I mean, economically, it's going to be kind of a similar situation for everybody.
Well, I feel like it's not really, the whole idea of RC delegation is not really to benefit the chain itself, because really the chain is good as it is. It's mostly about onboarding and
well, yeah, but that's the idea there, is to benefit the chain by onboarding, right? By easy onboarding.
Yeah. Okay. I guess the semantics of like benefiting the chain is to be defined, but yeah.
So it makes it a little less efficient. It will probably require a little more RC, is what it comes down to.
I don't know if it's a little more. I would say it's a lot more, because you have to. Well, okay. So basically, the drawback is that you have to delegate more to. I mean, you delegate less to everyone because you cannot. You have to really account for everyone that's
right. You can't handle oversubscribing by single users.
Yeah, but that's about it. And I mean, in the end, I don't think it would be too hard to move from one system to another, or just like duplicate it in a way so that we enable delegated RC one day. I mean,
yeah. I mean, I think if we wanted to add this later, it could be done.
Yeah.
If there's shown to be a real need for it.
Yeah, of course. And that's, I mean, I think there will be a real need for it, but that's also what we'll see later on, because there is.
Yeah.
I think.
I'm less convinced that this is going to be an issue that we're seriously concerned about at the end of the day. But
yeah. Okay. Okay. Great. Well, so I think we're good on using direct RC delegation in the way it was spec'd with posting, etc. Yeah. If you guys don't have any more let's say drawbacks to it, I'll probably start implementing it in the coming weeks.
Okay. Sounds good.
But yeah, feel free to request more details. I'll have a more deep dive review if you want. And yeah, that's about it for me on all of my points.
Okay. Anybody else have anything to bring up, or we can have a relatively short meeting?
I think we initiated a talk about rewriting the API. I created an issue on GitLab about retrieving blocks, and you said, oh, it would be good to do it for version 2 of the API.
Right.
Are there any plan or any discussion about first designing a new architecture before changing anything, or it's just
I mean,
is it just an idea right now?
I think we've been planning to update the API forever. I mean, at least on our team, it's been it's you know, it's something we put on the back burner, but I mean, the current API is one that's been gone through multiple iterations, you know, because of various changes. I mean, we have all the condenser API stuff, and you know, it's a lot of it's due to the functionality moving from out of Hive and you know, into Hive Mind and things like that. I mean, not even from us, we've done a lot of that too, but even before, Steam had done a lot of the same things. So, and of course, just the API itself has grown a lot. So yeah, I think we do need to sit down and analyze a new API. But you mean if we started doing anything like that, the answer is no. We haven't even begun. I mean, I'd like to finish all the stuff we're doing now before we move on to something like that. I just don't like to distract the guys by having too many different tasks going on simultaneously, and I want them to be tightly focused right now on the hard fork release.
Okay.
We do have a few new guys who are working on other things, but it's mostly just testing related, nothing design, not new design type stuff. So I'm assuming we won't kick off a discussion like that until after the hard fork.
Yes, we could start once we kick off the discussion, we could have like a Swagger API file and basically start to draft the ideal inputs and outputs for all of the common calls.
Yeah, I mean, we could get, I mean, probably we want to get a lot of discussion with the apps guys. And the other thing that bothers me about getting too far into this yet is modular Hive Mind will change a lot of this as well. So I'd also like to have the modular Hive Mind stuff ready. And I think that's going to be ready in relatively near term, within maybe a month or so. And I think once people see how that works, that should play some into how we build a new API. Because essentially one of the ideas there will be to structure sets of APIs that need certain sets of data. So I think when we design the new API, we should be building it in mind that we can say, well, you can get all these APIs just with this much data. And if you want to accumulate some more data, then you can have these APIs as well. I mean, I'm sure you're aware of this kind of ideas from dealing with Hive SQL, where you decide how many tables you want to create and stuff like that. But you can imagine then if you wanted to build APIs off that data, the set of APIs you can build depends on how much data you're accumulating in your database. So I'd like everybody to at least see what we've got done with that before we kick into how to model that second generation API. That's one driver, and the other driver will be, of course, what kind of needs the clients all have.
Okay.
Long story short, I know you'd like to begin on this as fast as possible, but I feel like we're still at least a month or so away.
Okay.
Any other questions or topics to bring up?
Not on my side, I think.
Okay, so just as I guess we'll continue the discussion about the testing and the Mattermost channels as soon as we launch the new testnet, and then we got to start pinging on everybody to try to integrate and start testing with it. That's going to be, I think, our next challenge.
Okay. So to summarize, we should expect a new Hive D for Wednesday.
Yes, and hopefully shortly. I don't know how long it's going to take for the Hive Mind, but probably not too long after.
Okay. So
yes, soon after, I expect to have account history node and Hive Mind up and running, and also I'll try with the Block Explorer too.
Okay. So we can build new testnet nodes and join them to the testnet you will deploy?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Cool.
Just the quickest route would be just getting some VPS, downloading binary and running it. Could be quick and easy.
Yeah, but it's always cool to build them from scratch. You know, to do
You're
those
welcome to do
codes,
that.
to compile it and.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, of course, of course.
So we'll be tagging, and this will be a tagged release, so you'll be able to, you'll know that you're grabbing the right version and everything.
Like a LC1 or C.
Exactly.
Okay, perfect.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else from anyone? I guess it's just us four today. So, okay. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
See you.
Thank you.
Have a nice week.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.